I'm not sure.
Nope, it didn't.
It didn't? Okay, well, either way, I'm recording right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to this research. I'm doing it for I think it's called the Do Good Now class, where we focus on like a social problem. And I decided to focus on, like, as you're aware, students with low income and like their struggles in the post-secondary education, like how they're like limited to options. And I just wanted to like hear from an expert, like understand more about the subject, and then like I said, know, like, kind of like, you're a professional, so you, like, like what's the best way to go about it. And so I just wanted to ask your thoughts and opinion on like what causes inequity in like the educational system for like low income students. Like, why is it so, like, why are they so disadvantaged, and like are there any programs or anything that's helping? I was able to read your papers though, and then I was reading about STC.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, great. So this is a topic that I've been interested in for a while now. I'll step back and tell you the big picture, why I think this is such an important topic, and it's great you've taken it up, which is that the gap in the labor market between those with a college degree and without is as high as ever, right? So that gap, what we call the college wage premium, how much more people who with a college degree make in the labor market, really, really rose over the 80s and 90s. And in the 2000s, the rate at which the premium has risen hasn't been as large, but the gap is still really, really large. And it's not just earnings. Now we know employment rates are substantially higher for people with a college degree. Their ability to weather a recession or a downturn is improved. And in fact, we're seeing what I would call like this college gap in all sorts of metrics in family structure and health outcomes, et cetera. So it's a real issue. And I think you're right to push on the idea that we need to close these gaps and help more people achieve a college degree. And by the way, that won't just be good for individuals, but that's also the best thing we could do as a country to increase overall growth and productivity, because college educated workers tend to be more productive and contribute more to the economy. So I think this is a critical issue. So the other thing we know is that there are gaps in the rate at which kids from high income and low income homes get a college degree. But an encouraging thing is that over the past decade, perhaps longer, the rate of college going, enrolling, has really increased. So more kids than ever are actually enrolling in college. 70% of high school graduates now enroll in college. And so I think it's really important to shift the policy focus from trying to get more people to go to college to actually trying to get more people to graduate college. And I think that point is often missed in the public conversation. People don't realize how common it has become for people to go to college. Now, there's like a caveat or footnote here. You might think 70%, well, that's still far from 100. You know, there are a lot of people who are not graduating high school with what it would take to go to college, and I'll set that aside because that's a different issue. Like the really disadvantaged, the people who are dropping out of high school, that's an important issue too, but I think it's a little bit different. So the one I think we should focus on is the fact that we've got 70% of high school graduates enrolling in college, but then especially among kids from low income families or among lower resourced, non-selective schools, the rates of completion are really low. So I came at this issue as like a labor economist who really sort of came to understand that this college premium was super important and we needed to get more people to get a college degree. And then the more I studied it, I realized that that was the margin that we needed to be pushing on college completion. So there's a lot of, do you want me to stop? Do you have a question, or I can keep going?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. This is
Okay.
what I've been researching. And
So
I agree.
there's a difference in the types of institutions that people from high and low income families tend to enroll in. And part of that reflects preparation. Part of that reflects the expense of college. And let me also point out that part of it reflects a misperception of the expense of college. So one thing I'll just say on this point, because people talk about how expensive college is, but those observations often are based on sticker price. And a lot of students don't actually pay the sticker price of college, right? So the sticker price is charged to high income students and subsidizes everyone else.
Wait, what is the sticker price?
So the
Like, what is
sticker
that?
price, so take a university that says their tuition is $50,000,
Sure.
right? So many families will look at that and say, well, there's no way I could come up with $50,000. But it turns out very few people actually pay $50,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So a lot of
Alright.
people will get financial aid both from the institution itself and from the federal government. And so one thing that people are pushing on is making the actual pricing of college more transparent. And again, since I said so many people are already going to college, part of what that will do is allow people to pick a better match for them if they actually can figure out, like, oh, I can afford these schools. And one thing we know is that a lot of the public 2-year less selective colleges, they just don't have as many resources to help students out. And so I think that is a big part of the reason why students there aren't doing as well. And there's been some really good research in recent years from economists showing that basically, like, what the issue with trying to figure this out is how much of it is that just kids that go to more selective, highly resourced schools are better students, and how much of it is they're at a school where there's more resources and more people helping them out and they do better. And so we want to get at the selection versus causality. And so what some economists have done is realize that in some places, if you get like right over some threshold on a standardized test, you can get into the flagship four-year school. And so by comparing people right on that margin, so they're very, very close, right? Someone just does a little bit better on a test than someone else. It looks like the students who get into these flagship universities, they have higher completion rates. And so, that suggests to me that there is a causal effect of getting to go to a highly resourced school. Now, obviously there are slot constraints and not everyone can just go to one of these highly resourced schools, right? But I think one of the things we could do a lot more of in this country is shore up the resources of community colleges in particular. And the reason I've come to be really interested in community colleges is because they are the access point to higher education for so many people around the country. They are all over the country. They're very affordable. Students who qualify for federal Pell Grants, for example, often attend community colleges free. So this idea of making community college free, like in a lot of places, it effectively already is, especially for low-income students. Half of students in the US who are in a college or in a community college, but many of them just are under-resourced. And so I was part of a working group a couple years ago for the Aspen Economic Strategy Group. It was a bipartisan working group. There were 3 economists, a CEO, a sitting college president, and a former University of Chancellor. And surveying the options and the evidence about the best way to increase skills and college completion in this country, our working group decided that the best thing to do was for massive investment in community colleges to make them stronger so that more students who went would actually complete a degree. Many of those students transfer to a 4-year college, or that's their goal. And so that's a very different policy idea than other ideas you hear about, like forgiving college debt for everyone or that kind of thing. And I'm happy to talk about why I favor one versus the other, but that's sort of my logic stream from we need to get more people to earn a degree. We actually know a lot of people are going to college, but a set of students at a set of institutions have low completion rates. And so this is what we need to do to increase completion rates for that set of students.
Yeah, I was actually doing, like, I've read about your thing, and then I just think the idea with the involvement in the community colleges like the best way to go about it. Originally, like when I was starting my research, I thought like I should be targeting like kids in high school and then like focused on like getting them like a private network to like these colleges that offer good financial aid or something. And I was like, that would still be expensive, like, because it's still you're paying for like a full 4-year institution. But like when I was reading about your like reading about what like the efforts you made in the community college, and then I was like, yeah, wait, the kids who actually go to community college are the ones who generally are having a hard time with like paying financially. So I really liked your idea. And then would you be willing to talk more about STC? Because I
Sure.
was reading about it and then I was kind of interested about its services.
Yeah. So stay the course. That's what SDC stands for. This was actually something we designed with our partners as a research demonstration. So a research demonstration means that this program was rolled out in a way for us to actually test the effectiveness. So this came out of work that I did with my colleagues at Notre Dame LEO, which is the Lab for Economic Opportunities. We met with Catholic Charities Fort Worth, down in Fort Worth, because they were like, we serve a lot of clients and we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to help our clients achieve self-sufficiency. And so when we went down and we realized that a lot of their clients are going to the local community college that had a 13% completion rate. And so we're like, this is part of a national challenge that like people aren't getting degrees from these community colleges. So we partnered with the local community college and they said, if you have any ideas about how to help our students, like we would love to work together. If you look at the like sort of literature, a lot of people focus on like tuition costs, but again, for like this population that we're talking about and that we were working with, tuition costs really aren't the barrier for them. Many of them already get their tuition covered. So they're essentially going free. But for people who are struggling with poverty or economic insecurity, there's a whole bunch of stuff in life that could get away if you're in the way of studies, right? Like issues with childcare, if you need to pick up more hours at work to pay the rent, a lot of stress in your life. So the program that the Catholic Charities designed in partnership with the research team in the community college was a case management wraparound services. And so what this was students who had access to the program, they would get access to a case manager who was basically there to help them troubleshoot life's problems. So this is different than tutoring. Like they might say to them, okay, you're struggling in this class, you should go to the tutoring center, but they weren't actually giving that kind of service. They were doing more typical like social service case management. It turned out, we didn't plan for this, but it turned out what wound up being really an important feature of the program, if you know, from interviews with the students who did it, was they referred to the case managers as their mentors. And they would say sometimes they just needed like a pep talk. Like life would be really hard and they needed someone who would listen and say, you can do this, I believe in you, let's like revisit your goals, you can get through this, which is sort of amazing if you think about it, right? You know, if you're somebody who you didn't come from a family where a lot of people went to college and you're at a place that's hard to navigate, you don't have a large support system, this kind of support really seemed to matter. And in fact, the way we did it was we evaluated it with a randomized control trial. So we couldn't serve everybody. We didn't have the resources to. So people applied and then we randomly essentially picked numbers out of a hat, not really a random number generator, but the same thing, and said, okay, you get access to these services. And the people who randomly got access to the services saw a large increase in the rate at which they completed college. And it turns out there's a growing body of evidence that this kind of intervention works for community college students. So there's another one, it's called ASAP. It was run out of a Kearney in New York. It was much more intensive and much more expensive, and they had a lot of student services, but there too you saw a doubling of graduation rates. There's a similar project now being run and evaluated in Chicago. And so there's a growing body of evidence that targeted student services can really help increase graduation rates at these kinds of schools for low-income students. So I think it's really encouraging, and it's a bit of a new emphasis. switching away from like where the evidence, where people have been putting their efforts is on like remedial education, thinking it was because people weren't prepared or thinking school was too expensive. And this suggests that like, actually it's just like students need wraparound services. Students in need wraparound services to help them stay on track and meet their goals.
Yeah, I agree. Is STC the program you're just referring to? Is it still being seen? Like, are you guys trying to implement it into more community colleges, or was it just like a test?
That's a great question. So because it looked like it was effective, it's rolled out at the other campuses at this community college, and a lot of other community colleges in the country who have read about this, or Catholic charities, they're implementing it as well. Leo is doing some of the evaluations of these replications. We want to see that it can work at other places. One open question is whether you need like a Catholic charities or a nonprofit providing the services, or if it's something that community colleges can do in their own infrastructure. So this is a question about scalability. So I'm working on a project right now with a community college system that I won't mention, but so a research team, we're working with the community college and we're trying to implement a program like this, but using the college advisors instead. And so far we're having implementation issues. Like the community college counselors seem to be really sort of strained, and they're not enrolling students the way it happened with Catholic charities. So we're working on seeing if we can improve the situation. If not, I think it will, it gives me pause to think that it's going to be something that a lot of community colleges can implement without a dedicated partner or a dedicated funding stream for this kind of thing. I think that goes back to something I was saying earlier, which is community colleges are strapped for resources.
Yeah.
So if you have like academic counselors who are like, I got to sign you up for your classes and I've got 1,000 students and I don't have time to tell you about this other program, these students aren't going to get these other services that are available to them. And so there's, we want to see this replicated, but it will require resources and commitment.
So would you be training these already like college advisors, or would you have more people like enrolled into like their system?
So it's a good question. So the folks at Catholic Charities Fort Worth who really like honed the design of this Stay the Course program, they have a training manual now. So when other Catholic charities around the country have said, hey, we want to do this with our local community college, they give them a training manual and say, this is what we realized worked well. Doing it within a community college is a little bit different. I mean, this is why it's interesting, right? Because different community colleges and different localities have their own, their own set of resources and their own, different student populations that you might want to adjust. So, some of these places will take this Stay the Course manual and adapt it to their own situation. We as the researchers don't do any of the training, but it is something that like people are calling Catholic Charities Fort Worth and saying, hey, we want to do a Stay the Course in our town or our campus too.
Are there any other organizations doing anything like similar to
Yeah, there's one in Chicago called 1 Million Degrees. And I don't recall off the top of my head exactly the features of what they're doing. Another group that is actually working on the margin that you had mentioned about getting high school seniors, they're called Let's Get Ready. And what Let's Get Ready does, it's a peer mentoring. So it doesn't have to be so expensive. Like a peer mentoring is they're hiring college students to help high school students complete the application process. And again, students from lower income backgrounds often, they don't have someone in their family who went to college and the process is mysterious. Or maybe they're at a high school that doesn't have so many college counselors. Yeah. So Let's Get Ready helps these students. It's all free for the student. They're run on like foundation money. So they will help students enroll in college, complete the process, and then stay with them. So when they're in college, they have a peer mentor. So that's a different design, but a similar idea. And actually, a colleague and I are working with them now to hopefully roll out an evaluation of this too. Because, of course, as a researcher, I think it's important that we demonstrate the effectiveness of these programs and figure out how much it costs. Like, for the number of degrees that are completed that wouldn't have been, how much do you have to pay? And those are important. Those are important metrics to get, because then you can take that to philanthropists or policymakers and say, hey, this is a cost-effective way to really make a difference. And these are the kinds of programs and projects and policies you might want to be investing in.
Yeah, are you familiar with QuestBridge? Because I've been following their model for.
I think, yeah, you know what? I have looked them up in the past, but I don't recall how they compare or contrast to the ones I've been talking about.
It seems very similar to the one, like the Chicago one you were just talking about. Where
Oh,
they,
no, Let's Get Ready is different than the 1 million degrees. But yeah, so QuestBridge is like, let's get ready.
Yeah. So like where they work with high school seniors or something, get them through the application process, pair them up with schools that they know will help. And then I'm not sure whether or not they like stay as like a mentor, but I just know they get them ready. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another one in Massachusetts called Bottom Line, that also I think, people have evaluated it and it seems to be effective. So again, I think this is really interesting because this changes the conversation from a lot of what we hear policymakers talking about, which is like, we don't actually just need to pay for so many more people to go to college. People are going to college, right? And there are more, there are institutions around the country that are more accessible and more affordable, but they need more resources to be able to help students succeed.
Yeah. Originally I thought, I was like, why not just try to like work something out with like the government or something? But I'm like, they're probably like sensitive towards like giving out money. They can't just give out like loads of money to like students, and then honestly, it probably would only help like a few students. So I definitely think the programs are the way to go.
And remember that the government does give out billions of dollars to students in the form of Pell Grants. And so part of the argument you can make for these types of programs that we've been talking about is the taxpayers are paying a lot of money for low-income students to go to college. And then we should make sure that they get a return on that investment, right? That those students actually get good skills and get a degree when they enroll in college.
Yeah. So in my situation, would you recommend like focusing on like programs similar to like STC and like QuestBridge and Get Started Now and stuff like that?
That's a good idea, right? Because you could say, then you can frame the problem as a lot of people are enrolling in college, but completion rates are really low. And
Yeah.
here's the new body of evidence that is showing promise in helping low-income kids succeed in college. And a lot of these look like they'd be scalable, and not so expensive, right? Like, our program costs $5,400 per student, which in the scheme of things, like, is not that much.
Right.
Right. Especially when you think about the returns to someone getting a degree, right? There's such a large improvement in people's earnings trajectory when they get a college degree.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed that too when I was researching it.
Yeah.
Do you have anyone, like, would you recommend me talking to like any particular organizations or any other experts who are like expert in this field?
Sure. What other perspective would be useful to you?
I would like to know more, like, I guess I would like to talk to someone who are like works for like one of these programs that you're talking to, so that I can get like an inside like sort of view and perspective.
Yeah. Let me think who. I wonder, this isn't someone that I've worked with, but given where you are, I wonder if it wouldn't be worth like talking to someone, if you poked around and looked at someone from like Montgomery Community College and said, can I talk to you about, or, I'm calling from University of Maryland. Here's what I'm saying. Can you tell me about the kinds of things you see your students struggling with, and see if that works. If you can't, you then reach back out to me and I'll see if I can get someone from one of the, programs that I've been talking about to talk with you.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for
You're
sending these
welcome.
documents. I actually learned a lot from them.
Good. Okay.
All right.
Good luck with your project. Good luck with the semester.
Thank you very much. Take
Bye.
care.